Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. Today, my guest is someone that I met when I was writing and producing for Brown and Out 5. I actually first saw him the year before in Brown and Out 4 as an actor. He's an immense talent, and I'm happy to have him here today. So I have my guests introduce themselves, so who you are, what you're about, and how you identify, just like a quick little intro for yourself.
Okay. My name is Cesar Carmona. I identify as a geeky Latin bear. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
All right, so let's start with where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in East LA. I've lived there my entire life. I moved out, lived in Montebello, which is the adjacent city for I forgot, I think it was 2 years. Okay. I can't even remember. But yeah, in the end, I moved back to East LA. That's pretty much the only place I've really set roots down in.
Okay, so you're still in East LA?
Yes, still living there.
And is your family originally from there? Or
my family actually is from Jalisco.
Okay.
My parents immigrated here and they had us kids. Mm-hmm. So we all grew up there, but in a sense, there was a duality there because we would always visit during the summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say East LA is where we're all from.
Wait, so what's Jalisco like? I hear a lot of people are from there and I don't know what it's like or where even it is.
Well, I'm from specifically Tepatitlan, Jalisco, which is, maybe people would get upset by me saying this, but it was essentially a one-horse town kind of situation, small farming town. It was really cute, really small. I remember when we would visit when I was little, it still had, cobblestone streets, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. But whenever we would go to Jalisco, it would be, just go to the airport and then drive to town, to our hometown.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about it, but it's a lot like a metropolitan city in a sense. Except I enjoy a little more there because the buildings are older. Yeah. You can tell they're older. Granted, it's not exactly the best idea for a seismically active area, but it is what it is.
You're from East LA, which is an actual is it a neighborhood? Is it a city?
It's not a city. It's an unincorporated part of LA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what it is, I honestly don't know how to describe it. I don't know the proper terminology for it, but I like to think of it as a no man's land of districts. Mm-hmm. You can call the cops and you can have, depending on what street you live on, you can have the Montebello Police Department, you can have the sheriffs, or you can have I forgot the other department, but there's another department, commerce sometimes. So it's I don't know, there have been incentives. People have been trying to get it turned into its own city. It can have its, be its own thing. But so far they've been unsuccessful. It's interesting. It's no man's land, as I call it.
Yeah, because I didn't even know there. I knew there was an east side of LA. I knew there was, East LA in the sense of east of downtown.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was its own place, really.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always thought that Boyle Heights, East LA was they were together. Mm-hmm. But as I've been, getting to know people, it's no, everyone separates the two. It's you're either from Boyle Heights or East LA. They're super similar.
Yeah.
But they're their own things. So that's why when people ask me, I specifically say East LA because there are people that will assume Boyle Heights.
Yeah. When I first started going to Boyle Heights, I assumed the same thing. And then I looked at a map, I'm wait, what's this? But
yeah.
Okay, so what was your home life like? Your family, where'd you guys live?
We lived off of Whittier Boulevard, which is a busy street in East LA, and it had a bunch of businesses and stuff, but our family life was really like I said, my parents were immigrants. So it was like, and they were raised in a small ranching town. So they were used to work. So I like to call it a strict but supportive environment where, every morning you get up, you do your housework. And then when you have free time, that's when you do your thing.
I relate to that.
Yeah. So, and ours were early mornings. It was like, wake up at 7, wake up at 6, you clean the house.
Yep.
You better make sure that's clean.
What are your weekend plans? Well, we're waking up at 7 a.m. and we're cleaning the entire house.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, and God forbid if someone was coming over, then everything had to be wiped down perfectly and pristine.
Yeah.
And that was our home life growing up. It was, you wake up, you clean, and then afterwards, that's when you can do what you want. My parents were strict in that sense, but they were supportive in the sense that they never expected us to to build our lives a certain way. It was always do what you're going to do, do what you want to do, but just don't bring any trouble into the house.
Yeah, my parents were similar in that way too, which is definitely like a different narrative than other immigrant stories where it's like, your parents come here and then they're like, you have to be a doctor, a lawyer. Like they have, and if you tell them you want to be in the arts, they're very like resistant to that. But like my parents were the same too. They were like, listen, handle your business, but like, and I don't know where that comes from,
Well, I know it's weird because I would have expected my parents to be like, you have to be successful, you have to do this because this is why we gave you a better life. But my mom and dad were like, I think the worst of it that I got was when I told my parents that I wanted to be an artist, that I wanted to study acting. And this is like a brief conversation. It was never even an argument. My mom was like, well, I was kind of hoping you'd be an accountant, but all right, fine. I was like, I'm just horrible with numbers. I can't do it anyway. So I was like, no, I would have been a horrible accountant. I would have been fired for sure.
An accountant's another like underrated profession of like preferred of immigrant parents,
and you can make good money out of it.
But my dad's an accountant and but I don't think he ever wanted, he's very much like a 9-to-5 accountant, and then he's like, I'm
gonna do my thing afterwards.
So I think that's what he sort of put on us. So did you what high school did you go to? What was that like?
Oh, and here's actually that's funny. That brings up another thing about unincorporated East LA. Because I'm from East LA, I technically should have gone to Garfield High School. And that high school is actually I want to say 5 blocks away from my house. But no, I actually ended up going to Montebello High School because for some weird reason, we fell under the Montebello School District, which is I had to jump on the bus and travel for 20 minutes to get there, and which is really weird considering there was another high school walking distance from me. For a long time growing up, I thought my parents had actually chosen Montebello High School, they did that. You fill out the paperwork to get sent to a different school, but my mom was like, "No, you just fall under the district." I'm like, "Oh, that's really weird." But yeah, so I went to Montebello High School. And then after graduation, I went to East Los Angeles College.
Yes.
Which, oddly enough, is in Monterey Park.
Yeah. And I was just at, they call it ELAC.
Yeah.
And it's a community college, right?
Yeah.
And it's
community college.
Ginormous.
Yeah. It is.
And it's a beautiful campus, by the way. I really like it there. I was like, I wish I would have gone to school here for a little bit.
Well, all of that has been happening recently. It was, it's been there for a while, and they started getting a bunch of grants, and they're making vast improvements to the school, which is amazing. But it was, when I graduated, one of my, because I've been studying theater for quite a while, and my theater teacher was the one that told me, is if you're not going to go to university and you want to study theater, you can go to ELAC, and it's one of the better programs that exist right now. And it kind of still is. I've been out in the world of theater now for a while, and whenever I talk to people, I ask them about Shakespeare training specifically. And they tell me they don't really get that much. They cover it in a semester and that kind of thing. And at ELAC, they actually have a summer Shakespeare program where you go in, you study nothing but Shakespeare, and at the end, you put on a little show. It's like a little showcase, and like a lot of people pay like upwards of thousands of dollars for that kind of thing, and we're essentially getting it for free. I mean, you just have to pay for books, and there's a small fee, but it's like $25.
Oh, cool.
And it's amazing, given that we're a bunch of Latino kids growing up either poor or with blue collar lives, and you get to study Shakespeare.
Yeah. And so you've spent a lot of your life in East LA. So were you mostly surrounded by like other Latinx people? Like, did you ever like?
Oh yeah.
Did you ever like? Did you ever live anywhere completely different than that, or like, what was like your experience of like LA as a larger city?
LA as a larger city. I mean, I did stay close to East LA. I was very much a homebody. I didn't explore a lot in my youth. So most of my how do I want to say, diversity came from school. And actually Montebello was a pretty diverse school. We had Latinos, we had Asian kids, we had Armenian. I mean, I learned about the Armenian genocide through that. I mean, there are people my age and older that don't know about the Armenian genocide.
Yeah, I didn't learn about that till I moved to LA. And then they have like the memorial, like, I don't know if it's a parade.
Yeah.
But
so it's and it was interesting. I mean, I do count myself as lucky. I'm not sure how much diversity is in Garfield right now, but I mean, we did get lucky. There was a lot there to learn from. And
like, speaking to that, did you like as a family go to other neighborhoods? Did you guys go to the beach? Like what was that like?
We would do things like that, go to the beach occasionally. We would, travel around. It wasn't a lot though, because I mean, there were 6 of us.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard to travel with all of us.
Yeah.
And we were all little shits. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know where I'm allowed to cuss,
fine.
but we were bad kids. So, the biggest thing was, like I said, every summer we would go to, Jalisco,
which is it's a different kind of like experience, like,
oh yeah,
there's a difference between like East LA and like going to Santa Monica or Venice, but like going to Jalisco.
Yeah. And I mean, the coolest thing though is that we drove there. It was never flying. We always drove.
How far of a drive is that?
I don't know. I would have to look it up, but it's long. It's long.
That's a lot.
It was fun. It was fun though. But basically my dad had a van, and we would all just load into it, load snacks. We would stop gas stations along the way, and head into.
I like that. That's cute, because I feel like talking to people that are from California, like doing a road trip is so not that common, because you have to drive 8 hours to get out of the state.
Yeah.
so it's because from the Midwest, you drive like 4 or 5 hours. You could kind of go to like different cities, different regions of the Midwest.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we did a lot of road trips, but like, so you're in this van, you guys are driving. Like, what states are you guys passing?
I would have to look at the map of Mexico to see what states we passed down there. But I mean, we'd go through, actually, no, it's a direct route from California into Mexico. Okay. We'd go through San Diego, Tijuana.
But you guys would experience like also driving through the border. Like, what was that like?
Cross country through the border. I mean, back then it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
It wasn't as much trouble as it is now. Thank you, current president. But it was just us sitting in the van watching like a bunch of strangers walking around the van. Like, it was a little eerie.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're checking for drugs, so they're looking around the van, they're checking like the tires and all that stuff. But it was never. My parents never put us in a situation where we felt we were in danger, so it was just like an eeriness to it. But it was always just like, oh, okay, we're done, and then we drive on. Okay. It was never a prolonged visit.
And like, how many times, if you had to guess, did you guys make that road trip?
Oh damn, how many times? I want to say,
because that's that much, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was quite a. Because and I'll tell you, it was the only reason we stopped doing it is because once we got into an accident, and it was actually a pretty bad accident.
Oh.
So thankfully, no one died. There were quite a few injuries, but it was never severe. It just when the accident happened, my dad was arrested because they blamed him.
And was this in the U.S. or in Mexico?
It was in Mexico. Okay. It was on our way back from home, or from
Jalisco.
From Tepa. Yeah. So, we had the accident. They arrested my dad, and I'm sorry to say that the cops there can be pretty crooked. They arrested him, and they didn't want to let him go. They were expecting my mom to bribe them.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, tourists.
Yeah, exactly. Like, never mind the fact that they're immigrants from there.
Yeah,
It was like, no, you're from the U.S., so you got some money.
If you're visiting, you got money.
Yeah, exactly.
We drove here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So they tried to keep him as long as they could. And it turned into a big old thing. And it was like a bittersweet thing because you found out how bad people can be and how good people can be. Because we had our accident. There were a few of us that were harmed, so they had to stay at the hospital. There were a few of us that were okay. And my dad was in jail, so it was just my mom by herself. Yeah. There was actually a nurse in the hospital where my brothers and sisters was at. I was one of the ones that was okay. And she saw that my mom was, worried because she had two groups of kids. She had to stay with the ones in the hospital. And she had the other ones here. So the nurse was all like, don't worry about it. She took me, I forgot who else, like a few of my brothers and sisters, and took us to her house. We got settled in, and then my mom went back to the hospital. And we actually stayed with that woman for a few days, I think.
Wow. And the accident, was it like two cars or? No,
actually, it was us by ourselves, thankfully. But what ended up happening, it was... we were driving during the summer, and it got pretty warm there. From what I have understood, the tire was a little old, and the road was too warm.
Yeah.
And it just popped. And while we were in the van, it just popped, and I think we flipped over like 3 or 4 times, like rolled. And it was crazy.
Yeah,
it was quite an adventure.
And is everybody fine from those accidents? Like, are they?
Yeah, I mean, like we had a few of, and this is the weirdest thing is like I had nothing wrong with me from that. Like I walked away from it completely okay. But some of my brothers and sisters have scars, but it's nothing, it was never anything severe, nothing life altering.
Yeah.
Except mentally, but
Yeah, that's crazy. So they eventually just like say, oh, you can go free, like to your dad?
My mom hired a lawyer, and that lawyer was like, you guys are obviously crooked. You guys obviously can't keep him this long, so let him go. And, the lawyer enacted, or basically he did his lawyer thing, and he's all like, no, you can't keep him. Let him go. And after that, that's when my mom and dad were like, we're not going to go back. It kind of dampers it. Yeah.
So did your parents come, like what year did they come to the U.S. and did they come together or was it separate?
It was in the 70s. I can't remember the exact date, but I know my dad came first and he saved up some money and then he brought my mom over. And it was, back then, again, when it was easier, it was through coyotes. I'm sure you know what they are, yeah. So they basically, and actually my mom has told us a few stories of, it wasn't her first attempt. She tried a few times to come over and she would get caught.
Yeah.
But I guess whoever my dad paid did a really good job and he brought her over. And, they settled down. And it's funny too, because as a queer man, my parents praise Reagan because he was the one that helped them establish their citizenship.
Reagan got a lot of like Latinx Republicans out of that. Like,
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
They praise him for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was around the same time of the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's 7 of us total. I used to be the youngest of 6. My sister came along a little bit later after most of us had grown up.
Yeah.
So I was the youngest of 6 at the time, so I don't really remember it. But I hear my brothers and sisters talk about how they would take them into interviews and ask them, is like, why don't you want to go back to Mexico? Why aren't you, you're Mexican. Why don't you want to go back there? Like
children.
To children, yes. Like they would ask them that.
Yeah, it's like just my process of becoming a citizen. It's a lot like it's a long process. It's a lot of money, and and you just feel like you're in trouble the whole time. And like they're trying to trip you up, but it's like, dude, like, what are these kids like? What do you think these kids are pulling? What do you think these parents like the president granted them this? Like, why are you then giving them a hard time about it? But but again, that's not how the system works. It's not like
you're guilty until proven
exactly.
Yeah.
And so your parents still live in East LA?
Yes. Just like any true millennial, I'm too broke to move away, so I live with them currently. And I think that's another great thing about my parents is like I've told them like I would like to move out, like I would like to have my own space. But then I'll be looking at apartments and I'll tell them, I was like, damn, this one's expensive. And I'm like, well, yeah, what do you expect?
Well, where do you think where do you look like to move? Like
honestly, I stay in the area. I stay in East LA.
That's good.
If I had it my way, I would have a little apartment in East LA.
Yeah,
I'd be cool.
You should get it now before.
Oh yeah, it's getting worse. It's getting so bad.
Because I live in the middle of like central LA, and I'm in the epicenter of it. But I see it spreading, and and really like in reality, like you would have to have got an apartment like maybe 4 or 5 years ago to to like be good, you know.
And it would have to be rent controlled.
Yeah,
because like I said, I've been looking up, what I would be able to afford. And I mean, I can't even afford a converted garage right now.
Yeah.
Like I saw one, it was a studio, no bedrooms in East LA in an area that's like right next to the freeway. So it's not exactly the best area for like more than $1,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I remember like you'd be able to pay like $600 for that and live comfortably.
Yeah, and it's nuts. I'm like, who's living there also?
Oh, the people that are moving in. Oh,
yeah. What's that like? Talk about that. Like, what's East LA like? It used to be like, and now what's it like?
I mean, I'm not seeing it as bad as Boyle Heights because I'm sure you've kept up with what's going on with Boyle Heights and gentrification. Yeah. But I mean, it's slowly seeping into East LA because now that Boyle Heights is scaring away the people that want to move in there. Yeah. Which I'm okay with for the most part. But because of that, they're looking at other areas. Yeah. And of course, East LA is one of them. Yeah. Yeah. So, you see, I think you see like these nice older houses being retrofitted and turned into modern houses. Yeah.
Because I'm sure people driving by to look for apartments, it's like bait. It's like, oh,
yeah,
this is for us.
Like, yeah, totally. And it's, like I said, it's not so bad right now, but you see sprinkles of those young, and I'm sorry to say white 20-somethings.
They know. We know.
Yeah. That are, well, I'm trying to be, neutral here, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. It's like people that don't really know the culture, but they just like the aesthetic of the culture.
Yeah, and like this could also double as a housing podcast just because like it is strange to be like, because it's like so many different things. It's like everybody's moving here. Yeah. People are taking advantage of that. Yeah. The laws don't really like support keeping the prices low. There's development going everywhere. I don't know who's moving into those developments, but they're everywhere. Like my whole neighborhood now, all the single family homes have been torn down, and you just get like
apartments.
Yeah, and like condos and like.
Well, one thing about apartments, and it's funny because I forgot where I heard it, and if anyone knows and would like to correct me on this, please do. It's to people create affordable housing, quote unquote, but there's a minimum to how many apartments you have to sell for that, for the affordable housing price to be considered affordable housing. So what I've heard a lot of people do is like they'll just put like maybe 3 or 4 apartments that are affordable, and the rest of them are expensive as hell.
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and also the residents get mad at the affordable housing people.
Yeah.
Because they're like, why am I paying all this? And like
They
this
don't
happens
have
a
to pay
lot
it,
downtown. They're like, oh, well, we have all these amenities, but why do the affordable housing people get to use them? And then they like will create little like tiers.
A class system. Yeah.
Within their own building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then some of these buildings that are going up, they're like, oh yeah, we'll add like 20 affordable housing units. And they're also all studios or 1 bedrooms. And I'm like, that's great for the single people, but what about like the working families? Like, where are they? Like, I was talking to somebody about this who works in architecture and just trying to explain to them that yes, you can build like a giant condo building in downtown or anywhere and have 20 affordable housing units. But if they're all like 1 bedrooms, that doesn't help.
Who's going to live there?
Who's going to, no one, and like, that's a thing. Like, there's no, like the people that do move in there can't grow in there. So then they will eventually have to move out. And we're not building like the amount of space required for just like working people, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that because I went to this like talk about like affordable housing, and somebody was talking about this, like, live at home. Like if you live at home, you will, because no one really needs that much space. Like the amount of space you need to live isn't like a 3-bedroom apartment where you have a guest room and an office and your bedroom or a 6-bedroom house, or like you don't need that much space. Like if we all lived within the amount of space we needed, and if people were just like, yeah, I'll live at home, then like the amount of apartments and like places would be so much more available. That's why when you're saying like you live at home, I was just like, I would seriously consider like, if my family lived here,
if it was available to you,
I'd be like, imagine the money I would save. Imagine like, and it's also great because you get to spend so much time with your parents past adolescence, where you can sort of like, hopefully you've grown a little bit and you can appreciate your parents. Like,
well, it's true, yeah, and that has happened. Like I appreciate everything they've done, everything like because when I moved out, it was so I can explore my freedom. Yeah. And when I moved back in, I kept that freedom. Like, and you know how it is growing up with Latino parents, especially, well, I don't know how your mom is, but my mom is very like, she'll baby the hell out of you.
Oh, I'm the middle child, so.
Oh, you okay. Well, I was the last, second to last one.
Yeah.
So I was babied for a long time.
Yeah.
And when I moved back in, it was funny because me and my mom got into arguments about like she would want to make me breakfast, she would want to do my laundry, and it's like, no, like let me do my thing. And I had a conversation with a friend that she told me is like, well, let her do her thing, like pick your battles.
Yeah.
So she still makes me breakfast, like I'll give her that, and she makes my lunch, but everything else is like, no, I still do my thing.
Yeah.
What you said about space, it's true, because I mean, I don't try to extend my space past my room so my parents can have their space. It's their house. That's the way I see it. I'm just borrowing space from them.
Yeah.
So I have my bed. It's my bedroom, my home office, my library, and my media center, because I have a TV in there. I have all my books in there. My desk, and like. I sew on my free time, so I have my sewing kits. All that stuff is all shoved into my room, and it's a bit of a nightmare when you try to organize it. But I did what I could, and it's not bad. It's space, and it fits everything I need.
Yeah, and it's also because when you just look at other countries and other cultures, like whole like family in-laws will all live in the same house.
Oh yeah.
And we're obsessed with space. We want because we see it as like a building block to your life, to your maturity, to like your wealth, to everything. But then it's like, do you need it? Like yeah, you have like the guest bedroom, but also no one comes to visit you. So why do you need that space?
Why do you need that space?
Yeah. But it's just like, and I think also like HGTV has just ruined this for everybody, because everybody.
Oh yeah, they want that
the man
house.
Cave, the office, the guest bedroom. We want it's a couple who isn't even engaged, and they're like, yeah, well, we need the guest bedroom for visits. The basement for when my parents come.
We need that extra bathroom because we don't want anyone stinking up bars.
And we want two bedrooms for the kids we're gonna have.
Yeah.
Plus the office, plus the man cave, and it's just like, again.
Yeah.
It's like, how much space do you need? Because the apartment I'm at now, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll stay forever.
Which is amazing, by the way, you guys. If you guys could see it, it's great. It's beautiful.
Don't tell that where I live.
The addresses.
But also, like, there is a part of me that it's like, am I gonna be like in my 30s, 35, 40? And I think it's also like a different culture with LA, because LA, everyone wants to spread out.
Yeah.
But if I lived in New York,
you get like this tiny little apartment.
People will live here till they're 80,
and
then die, and then the cats eat their face, and then someone finds it, and like,
so graphic.
But that's same thing with Chicago. Chicago's a lot like that too. Like, people will live because it's a working city.
Yeah.
I feel like LA is a working city. Everyone just tries to pretend like it's a working city, but also like a lot of people have free time during the day.
But I mean, it's interesting though because it's all shifting because I mean we're running out of room here.
Yeah.
Which is why they're building apartments. And I mean the infrastructure for transportation is insane. It's ridiculous. Like, and I mean it has to do with the fact that the automotive industry kind of destroyed that to make us dependent on cars.
Yeah.
But I mean now that everything is shifting and it's turning more into we need public transportation. We need that more than anything, and we don't need as much space as we need. Everything's going to start shifting in that direction.
Yeah, I hope so, because
it's little, but it is. Yeah. And I mean, and like you said, in East LA too, you have like 3 or 4 families living under one roof.
Yeah.
It's the house across the street from ours has one family, the guy's brother and his family, and they're all paying for the house. They're sharing one house.
Yeah.
And it's insane, but if it works, why not?
And I also know people that like live with their parents but are saving up for a house too.
Yeah.
Or like it's just so many different like living arrangements you can have. I think it's just also like a lot of people moving to LA are so used to also driving everywhere, because if you grow up in the suburbs of God knows where, like there's no public transport.
Like a 40-minute drive just to go to the movies or something like that.
So that's why everyone's coming to LA with a car too. Like, and then that's why parking is terrible and all that. But it's also like people are coming from the suburbs where it's like a single family home, and then they move into a studio, and then they're like, well, eventually I need to get where my parents are with a single family home, and I'm just like, where are you gonna find that? Like,
in LA? No.
Where? Like, no. I don't. And it's spreading. Like, it's slowly spreading because like all the single family homes here that were bought out, like those people are just moving further away where they can buy a nicer house, but then they're competing. They're raising the prices in that neighborhood and that town and that like.
Oh yeah, you have to move. You have to move pretty far away to be able to afford a house now.
And here's where, and that's the thing. LA is where all the jobs are at too.
Yeah.
So we want the city to be working. Everybody like working from Subway all the way to like LACMA executive director.
Yeah.
They don't want to be driving 2 hours.
Yeah. No one. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the problem also is that if you work at Subway, you can't even afford an apartment here. Oh. I mean, you can afford an apartment if, you rent a studio with like 5 other people and each of you just pick a corner or an edge. Yeah. I've seen that too. It's like, you can barely afford it, but you do with what you can. But the only way you can afford it is to like drive like 3-4 hours away.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you find something good, you can afford it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to solve it today, but you said you went to ELAC. Like, did you go to college? Like, what was the process of that? Like after high school, like your journey?
So after high school, I started working right away. Yeah. It wasn't like, everyone else's dream where you go straight to school. Mm-hmm. My parents imposed on me the idea that you better go to school.
Yeah.
So I did, but I wasn't sure what I was going to study. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, I was studying theater, but alongside it, I was studying animation. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge animation fan. I still watch cartoons, I'm an old man. I don't care. But so when I graduated, I wanted to do both. I loved both. So I was just taking my GEs, and studying.
Yeah.
But, there was a few bumps along the road, and I just kept working, and I ended up dropping out of school.
Yeah.
And when I came back, it was just, or I should say, I worked at a Subway, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And
my parents did too when they first moved here.
Really?
They both worked at a Subway. You can still smell the bread and cookies.
Oh God, going home smelling like that was the worst. Especially when you would walk home and the dogs could smell it. Like
That's
you
funny.
can see that the
That's
dogs
hilarious.
they caught a whiff of you. But I worked there for a long time, and then I eventually went back, and that's when I started hitting it a little harder. Mm-hmm. And I decided I needed to make a decision. You have to. So that's when, I started focusing more on theater. Mm-hmm. Me and my friends would take trips. We went to San Francisco, Washington, and all that. But then after a while, it's like, well, this is fun and all, but I have to finish my education. I can't mess around anymore. So I went back, and that's when I started doing theater. And at first it was theater and animation, but one of my teachers said, or my fascination was with hand-drawn, the traditional animation style. And my teacher basically told me, was like, no, you need to study digital animation. Yeah. It's the new frontier, and specifically 3D animation. And I don't like 3D animation. It's getting more sophisticated now, so it's nice. Yeah. It looks good, but something about traditional animation, I love.
Yeah.
So, after that, I kind of just switched over to theater. I took one animation class, one theater class, and I decided whichever one I like more, it will be my career choice. Mm-hmm. And I took theater, and that's what I stuck to. It was my favorite class that semester. So, that's when I studied theater. And what the cool thing about ELAC is that you study every aspect of theater. If you want a degree in theater from them, you're going to learn makeup, you're going to learn costumes, you're going to learn the basics of set design, the basics of lighting. And that's actually why I sew now, because I know how to sew because I took a costuming class. And I'm not a costume designer in any sense of the word. Yeah. But I mean, I understand texture, color, all that stuff. And it really helped. I can do my own makeup when I do theater. It's, it was really, all around a good education. And so that took a while. I graduated, and I had the hopes of going to a university, but, with the current administration and how, unaffordable college is just not in my wheelhouse right now. Yeah. Eventually I would like to go back, and a dream of mine would be to become an instructor, either university level or, high school level would be cool with me. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be an artist and be broke and tell my stories. Well,
listen, I went to a 4-year university. I'm still broke. So, and that's why I like to talk about these things, because it's first of all, it is a journey. Secondly, very something that you have to figure out. Yeah. You have to figure out okay, what are my options? What can I afford? Yeah. What is available? Some people are very lucky and they get the right loans, the scholarship.
Exactly.
It all lines up what they want to do. They go from high school to freshman year of college. But then also it took me 2 years to figure out what my major was even going to be. Meanwhile, I'm just accruing debt.
Yeah.
For that purpose.
And that's why sometimes when I hear people talk about how they went to a university as opposed to me who went to community college. Yeah. There's a sense of well, I wasn't as successful as you because I didn't do it. But at the same time, I mean, because I did that, I was able to work. Yeah. I was able to gain experience. I mean, and there's people my age I've met who don't have credit yet. Yeah. And I was able to establish credit. I was able to start a savings account. I was able to start a retirement account. Yeah. And I was I mean, I'm not in a great place, but I'm not in an awful place either. And I'm I'm not in debt.
Yeah.
Like I'm not up to my elbows in debt. Like I have a few credit card payments, but that's about it. Like that kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm like, there's a certain stigma to community colleges, but it's not weighing me down.
No. And I think like the schools would do well to stop, because I feel like it's a lot of the schools that do the stigma. Like
Definitely.
My high school printed out every name of every senior, like all 1,000 of us, and had a list of where they were going to go to college. And people were either like showing off because they're like, oh, I got to like Carnegie Mellon. Yeah,
Carnegie Mellon.
And other people were like, oh, I'm going to like the local community college. And it's just like, yeah, because again, it doesn't qualify like what your GPA, what your test scores were, how smart you are, because we have to all learn that maybe the money was just right for someone else that wasn't for someone else. Like there's a difference with that. Maybe someone got into Penn State but can't afford the flights to go visit, the flights to go
it's
with
expensive.
Flights to go with their parents, to set up their dorm, to make the Target run, to fly back for the holidays. Like some people can't afford that. Like it doesn't make sense to them. Like
I mean the idea of a college student living off ramen noodles and bananas or whatever it's true for that reason. It's like some people can't afford it and they do it anyway, and they live like that, and kudos to them. It's cool.
And everyone says this too, like if you're smart, you'll go to community college, get your credits, and then transfer to it. But then people seem too embarrassed to actually do that. And I'm just like, embarrassed to who? Like
and it's the idea also that you have to do it right out of high school. It's like, why do you have to do it right out of high school? Like I get it, there's a sense of urgency, but you should be allowed to live a little too.
All right, so let's talk about like your writing. Like I know you're an actor, but like when did you get into like writing, storytelling, all that jazz?
Well, actually, funny enough, I didn't think about this until you mentioned that you were going to ask this question. Mm-hmm. Like I thought about it, and I originally my answer would have been I just started writing, because I wrote for Brown and Out. Mm-hmm. That's technically my first produced piece. Yeah. But thinking about it, how I mentioned I grew up loving animation and stories and all that. Like even before I studied animation, I was into comic books. Yeah. And like I would write my own comic books, and that was my first foray into story writing. Like I would write the story, I would draw the pages. Like I think like maybe like somewhere in the back of my parents' garage, there's like one lost comic book or something. But like I think that was my first real experience in writing. I would create the stories, and I kept it up. Like I would write little stories, and I have like little journals where I would write fiction. They were never published. They were maybe read by a few friends, like close friends, because you know how it is when you're an artist, everything sucks until someone tells you it's good. So like that, I think early on, like when I want to say maybe 9 is when I really started doing it. Yeah. And I just kept doing it little by little, but it was never a serious thing for me. Like it was never something that I thought like, oh, I should be doing this more often. Not until Brown and Out.
Yeah. And that's the interesting part, that like writers will be writing without really even knowing that they're constructing a story, and they'll just do it for their own amusement. Yeah. Which is like something that's unique about it. So yeah, it's great and that's what I love about Brown and Out, is that anybody can just be like, I love what you guys did, I want to be a part of it. Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, here you go. Now in a couple months, you'll have a produced play. Yeah.
And I mean, and actually that's the reason why I got involved in Brown and Out too, because like you said, I acted in it last year, and I loved it. I had a lot of fun being in it. I loved the stories that were told. Like there were a lot of really good ones. But like I've told people, is like I had a little complaint though, because there was no, I guess, the story of a geek or something like that, like something that I would connect to. Yeah. And that's what, made me decide, like, I'm going to try and write something for it. And I mean, a lot of people say is like, if you don't see your story being created, then you do it. Yeah. And that's basically what I did.
Yeah, and I love that you had the initiative to do that, because it's that thing where people will see it and be like, oh yeah, that was cool, and then just be like, yeah, I love those stories, that's how my mom or my sister is.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, I love it, and it's like, but I feel like I wasn't in it,
Yeah.
And I think it's also like a thing we talk about within like identities within other identities. So we're like Latinx, so we're going to support this Latinx. We're queer, so we're going to support this queer festival. And then we're like, but like...
There's subcategories to that too.
And we have to like work to include those, and people have to be like, no, my story is worth being told because other people will hear it.
Yeah.
And I love that you took the initiative to do that, because it takes guts to do it, It takes guts to go and be like, I'm going to write for this, my first real time writing for a play, and say that it's something worth of value for other people to hear,
Yeah. I mean, it was, and there was a little apprehension at first. I'm not going to lie about it, because I mean, my story doesn't tackle like some difficult subject. It's not, some heart-wrenching story, or, like your story tackles a very important subject that has to do with, immigration.
Yeah. Again, coming from my own experience of being like, I didn't see a story about it, so let me put it in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You did the same thing. And like, so there was a little apprehension in the sense that, well, maybe my story isn't that important that should be told.
Yeah.
But I decided, I'm like, well, I mean, if it's not that important to be told after I write it, then, it won't get done.
Yeah.
Like I'll pull the story, or it won't.
Yeah.
But I mean, in a sense, it is a good story to tell, because it's how a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
Especially in the gay community, when you feel you're not good enough, especially when these standards are created.
Yeah.
Granted, these standards are being broken down now. Like, it's not the same as it was when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look deep enough, you can see that the characters are flawed, and they're, they have their things that they're working through.
Yeah, and I really like your story. Your story is about like this like gay geeky bear.
Yeah.
And I really like your story because it's like where like the gamers,
Yeah.
GAY.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you're right, like there's so many like geeky queer people that, love video games, love playing like Pokemon Go that yours is about. And I think that alone is why it's worth being told, because like how many of your stories do you really see?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So it's good that you did the initiative to put it out there and put it like, here it is for my people, because a lot of times writing is selfish. You want to write about yourself. Yeah. But also we're not that special or unique. If there's one of you, there's got to be at least a million. Yeah. And what I really like about your story, because I know you say like it's not that deep, but it's really about like from what I've seen about it, it's like how we interact with each other. How are queer people meeting, Yeah. And your play is called Better Than Grindr. Mm-hmm. And, Grindr is for, queer men or anyone else to meet through an app, and your character is doing it through Pokemon Go. Yeah. And like how queer people meet, how they meet in public, mm-hmm. how they like, and I think that's like the sense is like the personal is political, and that's what your play is about. It's about how do like queer people meet, what are the communities they're in, what are subsets that they're in, and also how is this different than 10 years ago, than 20 years ago. Oh yeah. And just somebody young that could be like, oh yeah, like I do that, like, oh yeah, I've met some friends through that, and older people that can be like, wow, things are so different now, like, can you believe how far we've come? Yeah. So that's what I like about yours, because it's very of the time and of people we don't get to really see, and I think you should give yourself more credit for that, because it is a great play, and it's speaking to a lot of people that don't really get spoken to. Yeah, and like I said, that was my big thing. Yeah, I just wanted to tell a cute little story about people who don't normally get cute stories. I mean, the closest thing geeks have is The Big Bang Theory.
and that one's a little problematic. I'm not going to go into it, but
I don't really watch it, but
no, I'm going to be honest. I fell in love with it at first, but it was very one-sided, or not one-sided. I mean, one-dimensional. The characters. Yeah. So it was very, they're just going off stereotypes.
Yeah, like the white, geeky, lanky person.
Yeah, exactly.
And doesn't do well with girls, but it's like maybe he doesn't like girls,
Yeah. And that was my big thing too. Is like they never put any, or I don't know, maybe the later seasons did, but any queer geeks.
Yeah.
And I mean, what? They don't exist? They don't hang out with?
I know a lot of queer geeks, queer scientists, queer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the big thing for me. It was like, let's show them. Let's show and that was my big thing too, especially when it came to casting, was like I really wanted a bear as the lead because, now that the culture's, getting bigger, like bears are in. So I kind of, introducing a bear lead isn't that big of a deal, but I wanted to make sure that, that the other characters could be whoever.
Yeah.
But I just wanted the bear lead.
Because, it's purposeful. You wrote that story with a purpose.
Yeah.
You want the casting to reflect that purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're so, with our writing and with casting, we're so inclined to go with what's worked or what we've seen.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's make him a different body type.
Yeah. Let's challenge that.
Let's challenge that because if you have one, you'll get the next,
Yeah.
But if you keep playing the same thing over and over.
Exactly. And I mean, and this is something I will pat myself on the back for, is one thing that I wanted to be sure of, that I included, I guess, a blank slate sort of character. It's the best friend of the bear.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that it was open to anyone, male, female, cisgendered or not.
Yeah.
And and even in the breakdown, I put down, it's like, I put down the entire spectrum.
Yeah.
I just talked about the character's personality, what I wanted. It had nothing to do with their style. It had to do with, this person is like super bubbly, super fun, super outgoing. That's all we need from them.
Yeah.
And that for me, that was the big thing, because you were there when we were working the scripts. It's like you want to try to be as inclusive as possible for all of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one thing that I really wanted to do, was like, I really wanted the bear, but I also wanted to give everyone else a chance to be another character.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, that character is a lot of fun. I kind of like the character.
You wrote it so well that anyone could play it. So it suits it well, because you don't have a certain thing in mind, because you could be like, this is just them. And it's like, cool.
Yeah.
And I think we do have to be, with casting, because it's that thing where it's like, let's have like diverse people, let's be inclusive. And I think as like Latinx people working in theater, in television, and in media, the teams we're building, we assume that just because everyone looks like us, that we're being inclusive. But it's like, if everyone else around you is like the same gender, same sexuality, looks exactly like you, then you did step one. But you got to do step 2, 3, and 4 to be like, who. And that's what I always try to think, is who isn't in the room, and how can we make space for them to be in the room.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. It's like, I mean, we're all working as Latinx people. Is like, we're pushing ourselves through that door. We're making ourselves known. But we also have to make sure that we leave that door open for anyone else. And that's kind of what was the purpose of that character. It's like, hey, I'm in here now, so let me bring someone else in who wants to come in. Come on. Yeah,
because that's the whole thing with this like industry. It's like, everyone will tell you, well, this is how I broke in, but it's impossible. No one can do that now. Like, the door sealed up right behind me. I got so lucky. These 3 things happened, and like, I'm in. Great. Like, let me try to make it work.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is like reach back and pull people through too.
Yeah.
Because then again, we're just feeding the same system that decides who's acceptable, who's allowed.
Exactly.
And
because what'll happen is, Latinos will be accepted, and it's all cool. It's like, we get representation. Yeah. But then you have queer Latinos. You have geeky Latinos, because
Yeah.
I mean, it like as an actor, like I've talked to plenty of people
Yeah.
who look more Latino than I do.
Yeah.
And they get cast for roles as like gang member or immigrant or
Yeah.
like, and it's if you bring in more people with you, you can expand on that.
Yes.
You can figure out where everyone fits.
Yeah, because if I was an actor, like, would I get cast as the immigrant? Like if on a script somewhere it said immigrant, and if I was like auditioning for that, would people be like, "Oh yeah, like let's do it"? Like, because they're going based off previous perceptions of what they're doing. Like, what's worked? What do we know them as? And we're not like making that identity more complex and like 3-dimensional to be like
Exactly.
like also like don't just have someone on your script that says immigrant. It's like, who are they? Like, what's their story? Like,
oh, and I've seen those kind of breakdowns before, where it's
Scary.
just like they're just looking for an immigrant essentially.
yeah, and it's like, well, what do you mean by that? And it's like they don't like that question because it
it puts them on the spot.
Yeah, and like who wrote that role?
Yeah.
Who was that person? Also, who's casting this role?
Yeah.
Like, and are those people expanding the perception of who this person is?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too because I speak Spanish. I can read Spanish and I can act in Spanish. And I will submit for those kind of roles. Yeah. Even though they make me uncomfortable. Yeah. But, sadly, we've got to work. So it is what it is. So I'll submit for those roles, but I won't get a call back because I don't look like an immigrant. Yeah. I don't look brown. I don't look, my features are more, I don't want to say Eurocentric, but I mean,
but we all know what people are thinking, and there's a representation of immigrants in the media.
Exactly. They're looking for,
like, you don't even have to say it because you know it, they know it. Like, and if you're not talking about it, then there's probably a problem with it,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad that you're doing Brown and Out. I'm happy to hear that it's your first writing on stage.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you think you'll keep doing it? Like, what's that looking like?
Actually, I did it again. I did another writing workshop. It's called, I'll mention the person who does it is Ana Bernal. Okay. It's, oh my God, East Side Queer Stories. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've heard of them.
They did another writing workshop, and I guess I was riding the high from writing this one.
It's addicting. Tell your story.
It is. And I decided, I'm like, well, I'm going to do that again. Let's see how it goes. And I actually submitted Better Than Grinder as my writing sample for East Side Queer Stories.
Okay, good.
And I got into it, and I wrote another 10-minute piece. And this one wasn't as open as Better Than Grinder. There is a character that I wrote as non-binary again, but that's because I wrote a demon. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of more fun that way.
Yeah. Not that non-binary people are demons.
Exactly.
Just in the religious sense, like angels and demons don't really have a gender.
A gender. Exactly. Yeah. That was my point for doing that.
Yeah.
But I just decided to tackle something a little more, I want to say not serious. It's something that a lot of people have dealt with. And this is, this would be masculinity within the gay community, and how people are very, how we in the queer community have valued before. I don't know if we still do, the masculine as opposed to the feminine gay man. And, it was to challenge that a little bit. Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing about plays too. It's like you can tell your story, but you can also tell the truth, Yeah. And so like what are you sort of diving into?
Well, I mean, and this one is actually diving into something personal again, something from me. But basically, it's the story of a guy who presents himself as masculine, and who, because of that, he tries to hide his emotions because that's quote unquote the masculine thing to do. And he loses a boyfriend because of it. And in a moment of weakness, he summons this demon to get revenge on his ex because he's angry. Yeah. and the demon helps him realize is like, no, you kind of did this to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, this is the reason why he left. And so, I mean,
helpful demon.
Huh?
Helpful demon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to ruin the ending, but
Okay.
he does it for his own reasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. When I was in the process of writing it, people were like, "He's getting off too easy. Can the demon like do something to him?"
Yeah.
Like, it was fun. It was fun writing it.
Yeah.
But like, and it was.
Like, that's a woke demon.
Yeah. He knows what he's talking about, or they know what they're talking
Yeah.
about, I should say. But it had to do with, me dealing with that personally, where, I was raised as a Latino Latinx person.
Yeah.
And we were, you're raised to be masculine, you're raised to be butch.
Yeah.
And I mean, not until I started exploring, what it meant to be queer and what it meant to be growing up as a queer man is like, you don't have to be butch. You don't have to be exclusively, I'm a man's man. I chop wood and like, I don't know,
like cowboy and
yeah, exactly. At the OK Corral, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like growing up like that. It I don't want to say it damaged me, but it did make me take the long way around to finding myself, as opposed to just finding myself right away.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I wanted to tackle, especially considering that it happens a lot in the Latino community, Latinx community. It's people being told that this is what it means to be this gender.
Yeah.
When it's a spectrum, you can't be one or the other.
Yeah.
You're somewhere in between.
Yeah, and it'll fuck you up too. Like,
oh, definitely.
Because again, you're trying to fit into a standard set by, our culture and society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're policed by it too. Like, people call you out if you're not being masculine enough. Like, even as a kid, like, how many times are you shamed because like you did something that's for girls, like. Yeah,
exactly. Like, you're not supposed to play with that. That's a girl's toy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
And I do think that like Latinx people and culture do get like a bad rap for machismo.
Yeah.
Because again, I was listening to this on another podcast. Like, we have a word for it too. Like, what's the translation in English for that? Like,
why am I blanking?
Closest thing I could come up with, like, toxic masculinity or.
Yeah.
But I was listening to somebody else talk about this, an author, and she was saying, like, we get a bum rap for it, but at least we have a word for it. You know? And I think it is that, like, they're saying like, oh, like the Latinx culture is all so male dominated and like masculine and you have to be the tough guy.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and like white culture isn't that? Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Like other cultures don't do that. Like, I think especially like with the mainstream white media, we do get the sense of like, brown and black people are like a little behind on like the modern times of what's masculine, feminine, what's gay. But I'm like, who's running all those conversion camps? Isn't it white evangelicals?
Oh, totally.
So why don't they get the same rap? Meanwhile, we're just like, our example is like, don't cry.
Yeah.
You be a man.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's universal. Like, we live in.
Everyone got that. Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like our version is unique to our culture.
But it doesn't mean it only happens in our culture. Yeah.
Yeah. It just presents itself as different ways. You know?
Yeah. And that's very true. Yeah, and like
in the queer culture too, it presents itself as a
total. In the queer culture, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like when you see profiles looking for straight acting only,
like that's toxic.
Yeah,
that's toxic to our own community.
Well, actually, and again, like I said, my story was written from something personal. And it was one big thing that after I started growing as a person, one thing I realized is when I first came out, some people would say, oh, well, you don't act gay.
Yeah.
And like, I never said it outright, but like, I would feel good about that.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, why do I feel good about that? Like, what's good about that? I was like, shouldn't people be able to tell that I'm queer and be like, oh, you're.
And it's the same thing with like, you don't look Mexican. And it's like, if you feel positively about that, there's
something up.
It's the same like self-hating, like
exactly.
Like and it's of course it's everything you've absorbed from the culture,
Yes.
You're being rewarded for not being too Mexican. You're being rewarded for not being too gay.
Oh, don't get me started on not looking Mexican.
But that's why I did this podcast too, because it's like, let's define and expand the definition of that.
Yeah. There's so much more to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, with queer people, it's a lot. Because, I'm not on these apps. I'm in a relationship.
Yeah.
And even before then, I've heard from a friend that the bios and the pictures aim for the most masculine version of this person. And then you'll meet them in person. It's like, who was that? Like, who was that? Who was that?
Not as advertised.
No, and not even in like, oh, don't you trick me. But it's like, it's crazy that how we perform masculinity on these apps.
Yeah.
And then like, you meet some of these people in person and you're just like, what? Like, why are we playing a game where it's like sup, or like, hey, how you doing, man, or bro? Yeah. And it's like, I've never said bro out loud, like, but I'm texting like nothing but, like,
it's
crazy.
It's interesting to see,
and we're so indoctrinated and it's so embedded in like how we act, how we respond to each other, how like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest thing I had to those apps was Bear 411,
Shout out. Now you know where to find it, Cesar.
Oh yeah, I mean, my profile is still there. I haven't used it in forever because I have a partner as well.
Yeah.
Like I never had Grindr or those other ones, but in that one, like you do see some people that try to present themselves as masculine, and then for me in particular, like. It was never my intention to present myself as masculine, but the pictures, look masculine because I'm some big guy in a beard. So people right away assume, you're uber masculine. Yeah. And I would get messages being like, you want to be my daddy and this and that. And I'm like, can we just talk? I mean, like,
very much your play, like, what's your username on Pokemon Go, like.
Exactly. Actually, yeah. Like I was never. I'm not like this uber masculine, oozing testosterone. Let me bend you over the table kind of guy. And even like now, I work. I go dance, and people have this projection of me as this like this daddy type. And then people meet me and they're like, oh, you're not like that at all. And luckily it hasn't been negative in the sense that people are disappointed. It's just like, oh, it's something you have to unlearn. It's something I had to unlearn as I was, growing into myself as a queer man. It's like, because I remember in my youth, and, I will say it with a little bit of shame, but it's who I was in the past. I would look for like the butch guys, and I realized that the only reason I was doing that is because I didn't want people to know I was queer. I was hiding it from myself and from society. But now I don't give a shit. It's whatever. I mean, screw that. And
it is something you do have to unlearn though, and you have to work at, because it's so easy to fall into the thing you've been taught your entire life.
Exactly. It's something I've been working at for quite a while. And and that's another thing too, though, is you have to admit it to yourself. That's what's happening.
And it's not even finding fault. It's like accepting that you feel shame about it. Because you're right. It is all shame. It is shame about who you are, who you're supposed to be. Like,
exactly.
And it's like, this is so dope, but that's what for unlearning stuff, like I went to a bathroom and they had like weird symbols on both bathroom doors. And I was like, but I don't know which one's male or female. Like, which one do I go to? Again, they were single use bathrooms. And I was like, oh, gender is a construct. Okay. But like I had to, but like immediately I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh, like which one do I go into? And it's just like, that's the point. The point is like, it doesn't matter. Just go in. Like,
just
fine to use
as long as no one's in there, you can go in there.
And I was just, but that's the thing. Like immediately, I was like, these weren't the rules.
These
aren't the rules we play by. Like, what's going on? It's like,
Yeah.
Well, the rules are changing to be more inclusive to people, and like, and you're still fine, you know, like.
Yeah, the world isn't collapsing around you. No, everything's okay.
Yeah. And so, what else are you working on?
I mean, right now I've been working on a web series, I guess you can say. Mm-hmm. I've written 2 scripts for it.
Cool.
it's in the process of being worked on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I have friends on board that want to do it.
Cool.
So we just have to figure it out from there. The biggest thing would be I'm part of NHMC's National Hispanic Media Coalition, for the people that don't know the acronym. Shout out, yes. Their Latino Showcase, which is pretty amazing. They gather Latino writers. They write, I think it was 3 to 4 minute scripts. They pick, I forgot how many they pick. I think they pick 10. I don't remember. But they pick the ones they like, or the best ones, and then they cast Latinos in those roles, and they put on a show for industry people, NBC, ABC, that kind of thing, for agents. And it's basically, the only reason they do this is to showcase Latinos.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Like, it's not, they're not getting paid for it. We don't have to pay anything to do it.
That's cool.
Like, we just go do it. And, hopefully some people get agents for it. Some people get recognized for it. It's a great opportunity for Latinos. The NHMC has been really I recently got involved with them. I think it's been like a year, where I'm like helping them with things. Like I volunteered with them, and it's a great opportunity. They're really trying to help Latinos in the industry.
Yeah.
Get in the door. And specifically now they are, and like I said, opening the door, like I mentioned earlier, you open the door, you have to keep it open for people. They open the door for Latinos, and they're keeping it open for queer Latinos too, for non-gendered Latinos, for anyone, as long as you consider yourself Latino, as long as you are Latino, you will be given an opportunity kind of situation that they're doing right there, because it's conversations that I've had with them where, they're talking about bringing Latinos, queer Latinos in too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, just cisgendered straight Latinos that are trying to get in the business.
And it by the way, it's easier for cis straight Latinx people to get in the business. So again, if you're doing this work, make sure you follow the whole way through to everybody with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And I mean that's what I love about them and what they're doing. So I'm not on board with them as a writer. I submitted actually. Yeah. But I mean, I wrote it super quick. So yeah, it was.
There's next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, the only reason I wanted to go in as an actor specifically, because that's my first passion, which I got, which is awesome. But I submitted in a piece just to prove that I could do it again. Yeah. And it's just some how they tell you just have to keep doing it, doing it, and that's what I did. I was like, it was probably crap. I don't remember what I wrote. I'm pretty sure I didn't write it well.
But also, like, that's subjective to whoever is
exactly.
Reading it,
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was me just pushing myself to do something. Yeah. So I mean, and I encourage everyone to look them up.
They do a lot of good work.
They do. And I know for a fact right now they're looking for submissions for a writers program.
Their famous writers program.
Yes.
Gets bigger and bigger every year.
Yes. And honest to God, I mean, I was thinking about submitting for it.
You should do
it. It seems like fun. I mean, if it's anything like Brown and Out, if it's anything like East Side Queer Stories, it's going to be fun.
And I would tell everybody to take advantage of every opportunity.
Definitely.
Because I have looked at their past winners, and I'm just like, let's change it up a little bit. Shall I say?
Yes. Exactly.
Let's get more immigrants. Let's get more queer people. Let's like
get some,
mix it up.
Some non-binary.
Yeah.
Let's get
some just even like dark skin people, like
some differently abled people.
Yeah, exactly. Like this isn't just for one kind of person. Like, and it's the duty of these organizations to diversify and be inclusive, but it's also on us to show up.
Yeah.
And again, because if no one's asking for you, then then show up anyway. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, back to Brown and Out. That was the thing. It's like they welcome everyone.
Yeah.
But someone like me wasn't stepping up to it.
Yeah.
Like they weren't doing it. So I just went and did it.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. It's like it. I mean, a lot of people want to say that we're not being included, but it's like at the same time, someone has to be there to say why aren't they included or why am I not there?
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to. If no one's there to do it, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah, because that's a big question, and not just the entertainment business, but every industry. It's like, well, we're being more inclusive, we're trying to diversify, but no one's showing up, and it's like, okay, well, what have you done to get them in the door? And they're like, nothing. We're just looking. We're just looking at the resumes we got, and it's like, okay, well, step one, take initiative, because again, it's like it's easier for some people, it's harder for some. How can you make it like more? Because that's what inclusive means, to make it more accessible to more people, despite anything else, economic level, like physical ability, because it's like we're working people, we got to make sure that we work for working people. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so everyone listening to this podcast, I encourage you to submit for the writers workshop. Look up National Hispanic Media Coalition. It's on their website. I encourage you guys to support them too, because they're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And they have people on board who are trying to help, who are doing their best to get people in there.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about them. Actually,
That's good to hear.
It's really cool. So I mean, do it.
All right. So now, as we wrap up, I feel like we've covered a lot.
We did.
So I'm trying to title every episode, the person's name, and also like a little byline for what they would title the episode. So it's like, because I want to make this podcast inclusive, and I want when someone sees that to be like, oh, that's like me. Let me listen to it.
Okay.
Or see all these titles and be like, they haven't had someone like me yet. Let me reach out. Because again, I'm interviewing anybody who identifies as a Latinx writer. So
and I mean, you try to be inclusive, but sometimes it's just like someone falls through the cracks, sadly.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like reaching out to people, but also making sure
everyone knows that you're welcome if you want to do it.
Yeah, again, anybody. I will interview anybody because that's the purpose of this.
I mean, I suppose as long as they consider themselves a writer, right?
Yeah, but there's different kinds of writing too.
Yeah.
All right. So what would your episode be called? So this is the structure. You can move it around a little bit, but it's called A blank Latinx writer.
I think the best idea for me would be the geeky Latinx writer.
Okay.
I mean, because that's my main.
Yeah.
My main thing is like I'm just a huge geek. I'm that. Well, I've been working on it as an adult, but I'm that quiet one that sits in the corner and watches people, and like when you talk to me, we'll talk pop culture and stuff, and it's just that's kind of me.
Okay, so a geeky Latinx writer is podcast. So this is what this podcast is now. And
if you geeky Latinx writers out there, or geeky Latinx people, you don't have to be a writer yet. I mean, all you have to do is sit down, put pen to paper, and start doing
that is all you need to be a writer. So
you're a writer if you do it. You're a
writer if you're thinking about it. You're a writer if you like.
Yeah, if you have a story in your head, just do it. And because I mean that's basically what got me started in writing, and I'm enjoying it. So just do it.
So where can people find you? Where if they want to follow you?
If you're curious where this sexy voice is coming from,
you just want to see what he looks like.
You can follow me on Instagram at Theater Geek. My Twitter is Theater Geek @TheaterGeek84, I believe.